what kind of, whether
Sorry.
oops. That's okay. Whether, you have a family business, whether you want to be a day trader, whether you want to get into stocks, whether you want to be entrepreneurial on campus. We're essentially looking for the student who's doing something outside the classroom. So typically, my standard answer is that the student should be self-starter. And I understand that when you're in high school, it's difficult, but there are resources that are out there to help students figure out what is it that they need to do. We also look for students who are actively participating in doing things, be it on their high school campus, be it in their community, in their neighborhood. Essentially, students who are involved, and we hope that that would translate when they are on campus as well. So not only are universities academic, but we are also a living, breathing, organization and organic ecosystem for students to, thrive in, hopefully.
Oh, awesome. So based on, since you said universities are a living, breathing organism, which personal or contextual qualities like resilience, commitment, creativity, impact tend to influence decisions, and how do you sort of evaluate them, find those qualities, and assess for them?
The crux of it, it's important to remember that these are, 16, 17, 15-year-old kids who are submitting their, applications. And the Common App has a beautiful section which allows students to enumerate all the different activities that they're doing. Two things. One, when I see 5 pages of activities, I keep wondering, are you really doing all the 15 things that you've listed out? Because I understand that you have a high school commitment. There are only 24 hours, and hopefully you're getting some sleep in between. So I would say that, we understand it's a dead giveaway if you're doing 15 different activities. What I guess I also personally like seeing that the student has picked a few, concentrations and is being dedicated towards them. There are the student athletes who are, dedicatedly playing for a while. There are students who have learned how to code and have started a group or a club in their school. I guess we are trying to see consistency. I guess we're trying to see dedication, uh, you know, following something through fruition. Maybe you're starting a club or you've joined a club and how you've added value to it as well as to your life. All those factors are things that we do pay attention to. So it's not just a long list of everything that you've done. And, my favorite example to say is I walk my family dog 7 days a week. And we'll often laugh and say, well, you're just being a good human being by walking your family dog. So, be thoughtful, be mindful about how you're building your profile and what is it that you're doing.
Okay, interesting. But having said that, I think consistency in assessing character is really hard thing to do, right? So, have you introduced rubrics or metrics or some sort of quantification or training to help readers interpret these traits, and how can they sort of display integrity, and how is these measured, or is it more subjective in its nature?
Is subjective because, at the end of the day, the US education system relies largely on integrity, on honesty. And, at face value, we like to take what's written on paper as facts. Very rarely are we, Googling and doing a little, it's not my job to play detective. My job is to hope that the student has lived an authentic experience and thereafter presented it to us on their application. Something that adds value to what they want to do, something that adds value to where they hope to take their careers, their future, ambitions towards. Um, if there is something suspicious, which we do see sometimes, we do get in touch with college, guidance counselors. We do check back if you're saying that you started a nonprofit organization and you're running it, and at 15 you're the CEO and the CFO and all of that, we do a quick search to see whether or not this is actually out there. um, so some part of work experience, some part of legitimacy checks we do have. In terms of character, we look at the kind of experiences that the student is having. What are they highlighting out of those activities that they've been involved in? Whether it's a robotics competition that they were part of, we try to dig deeper to see what was the purpose of doing this. Why did you get involved in this project, or why are you doing a research assignment? Students often ask us that, oh, I'm working on a research assignment, and I will turn it back to them and say, what are you researching on? Who is your audience to read this research paper? It's great that you're learning the skills to read vast amounts of data, analyze them, put that in a report, make it tangible, make it, something that people with very minimal understanding will be able to understand. But what is it in for you? So, these are the kind of things that we look at when I'm looking at that list of activities that you're doing. How are you building your profile? How is it actually adding value to you versus saying that I am the CFO of a nonprofit that I started? That added value is what we look at.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Well, actually, that's a very great way to put that out, because the next question kind of that I have weaves into very much of what Oristha you were mentioning, the real voice of a student, right? And now that with everything that's available, we're going to definitely address the elephant in the room, which are essays and the authenticity around the essays, which is a huge question mark now. With AI tools everywhere, obviously, how are you protecting an applicant's real voice?
Well, I think the onus is on you guys. The onus is on, guidance counselors to be able to really nurture the student and tell them that, your voice matters, your unique perspective matters. It might not sound like the most prolific writer and author, and I don't expect that. Again, we are very aware that you are 16, 17, almost at the cusp of turning 18. I can tell when an 18-year-old is writing because these students are also emailing us. So we can tell, how kids write. I think sometimes students get very caught up with the idea that, it has to be flawless or nothing. And that's where we start seeing some students struggling, some students, fall behind. Farheen, you and I have had conversations about students who, why is it that they lose motivation while, building their profile, while prepping for the application process? It's because they feel like it needs to be perfect or nothing. And no two voices are the same. The only time two voices sound similar to us is when there has been some use of artificial intelligence from various platforms. That's when we start, noticing patterns and trends and similar introductions to essays. Similar analysis of life's problems. That's when we don't see the authentic voice. However, it must be said that there is no current legislation or rules or any kind of um, penalty that students will face if they are taking the help of artificial intelligence. This is not something that the College Board has or universities across the board have made it, out to say that it's illegal. So, it is fair game for students to seek help should they feel the need to do so. And we recognize that there are certain markets where resources are not available. In a market as big and booming as India, you have so many places that you can turn to for help. But I was in Mongolia earlier, this fall, where there aren't a lot of resources available. So students can turn to AI to kind of help them brush it up, help them personalize it. I think, like I said, the onus is on counselors, the onus is on, people who are at a position where they can provide the guidance to be able to say, yes, take your help, but take the help of AI where you need it, but also don't lose the essence that you are. A student writing that, this is a big problem that I've faced and this is how I overcame it, in their most authentic voice will carry far more value than, something that is generated and fictitious. So yeah, I think that's how I would look at it.
Okay, awesome, interesting. But we are also seeing some universities like, let's say, Duke reduce the weightage of the essay after seeing the influence of AI. Have you noticed any changes in the essay qualities or essentially the content coming to you? Has there been fluctuation? What are some insights that you're seeing this admission cycles?
So at my institution, we have not reduced the weightage of the essay. It is still important. As a matter of fact, Bentley also has supplemental essays that we require, students who want to show demonstrated interest, um, submit answers to them. I think, that's a very good way to cross-check and verify what is authentic, what is not. Because if you're required to submit multiple writing examples, right, there needs to be a sense of cohesion. Someone writing the essay, someone needs to be muted. Someone writing the essay versus someone writing the supplemental essays. If there is not a match, it's a dead giveaway. Universities like ours that do holistic admissions, which means we are looking at everything, we are taking a step back and evaluating every aspect of the application profile. We have not reduced the weightage. We are also a institution that's test optional, so it would be unfair to reduce the importance of the essay. Universities that have moved back to testing mandatory SAT, ACT requirements do sit at that precipice where they are able to pick and choose because they
Yeah.
are getting those standardized tests, so they are able to see where you are academically, be it through your English, your comprehension, your mathematics, your analytical skills. However, holistic application reviews will still rely to see whether or not you are presenting your authentic self. What is it that you have experienced before you are applying to college? So, depending on, the institution's profile and whether you're test optional or not, whether you are, holistic or not, whether you are a state school, whether you are, research focused. So, there are different parameters. A lot of engineering schools will say, yes, give me SAT scores and not even look at, the English verbal section and just focus on your math scores. So there isn't a one size that fits all. Size of the institution, what you're trying to achieve, what the student would benefit with most is also something. And I'm pretty positive of all the universities that I've worked at. Most of us have a placement test that we require our students to do. So if you are faking it, you
Yeah.
do still have to, do the English and math placement tests, which help us put you into classes that would help, augment your learning. So there are checks and balances that we have in our systems.
Okay, very interesting. And now, given the entire AI thing, about one third of applications are now using AI for writing their essays. Are you experimenting with live or proctored writing tests, video essays, and charts question as well on the panel? Are you using some tools to detect AI? What are the repercussions of submitting AI generated content? How are you sort of dealing with that?
We haven't started reading for 2020 class of fall of 26. We haven't started reading
Yeah.
just yet. And there's always, some training, some, brushing up of how we approach applications and things like that. So I don't know if that is something that we are going to focus on for fall of 2026. But we are hearing about, universities using Turnitin.com used to be so popular when I was in college.
Yeah.
Similarly, we've been told that through our Microsoft suites that we have, we are able to quickly verify whether documents or papers or, essays that are coming are authentic or not. It's a matter of copy pasting it into the system to see how much, of the content is AI generated. And the curse of having to read a lot of applications is that after a while, you know very quickly what is authentic and what is not. And if I read one more essay about how a student's life is to the likeness of a butterfly, I will know that you are using the same AI. And I
Yeah.
often,
Okay.
I joke about this and I say this to students is that, what the human mind can do in terms of creative writing, AI cannot. So if everybody is putting in the same exact prompt, the same exact question, believe me, you will get a 98% similar essay unless you're changing the
Absolutely.
essay question.
Absolutely. But interestingly, I think working with a lot of independent counselors, some of them have actually raised this concern where students are writing so well that it is coming out as AI detected, although they're writing in front of counselors, and that's also been the flip side of it. How are those students going to balance it out? Is also a question in this detection.
Think there's a very, very clear, giveaway when we see authentic writing versus, AI generated writing. Um, I say this to students is that you're not trying to impress me with all the difficult words that you learned for the SATs. I already know them.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we see that the students who are genuinely good writers, um, you can tell because there's a cohesion of thought, something that AI is not able to do. AI will spit out paragraphs that mean nothing. They're going to be all in English. They're all words. They mean nothing. And, the really gifted writer is able to think of, how they want to design a paragraph, how they want to lead on to the next, change of thought. Things that we learn, hopefully, in school still in fourth, fifth, sixth grade when we're, learning how to write essays, we're learning how to hone our skills. Um, so, students who are truly gifted will not get punished for having, great writing, the ability to express themselves. Um, at the same time, I'm not expecting Shashi Tharoor level of writing. You are again 17 years old. I guess the stark difference is that, the human touch, which tends to
Yeah.
miss, when students are writing about an unfortunate, experience that they had. And post-COVID years, we read a lot of those applications where, students they lost a family member or someone very close to them, something happened, that level of empathy that a human brain is able to design and articulate, AI is not able to, do that. AI is not able to feel the grief of losing a grandparent, which,
Absolutely.
you as a person will feel, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, so every story is unique, is what you're saying, and how do you tell that story, and how have you sort of gone out and worked on that story is more important.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's your unique voice that matters because when we set up classrooms, we often think of the perspectives that you're bringing, the unique experiences that you will bring into your classroom. So that's important.
Okay, awesome.
Great. Well, that was an interesting conversation about essays. And now we'll step out of the essays to understand really about everything that comes beyond grades and how those essays are formed and shaped in a student's life. So, given the number of activities that have multiplied over the years, how are you kind of verifying those certifications that the student has done, or probably anything that they have achieved? Are you requesting any certificates or timestamps, attestations? Is there anything specific that an institution like yourself will need to verify the validation for it?
Are students saying that they've won awards? We typically will take them at face value. We're not, like I said, we're not in the business to be detectives. We're here to, explicitly trust students. And the trust factor, once you do arrive on a college campus in the US, you do realize that the trust factor plays a big game. And, this is something that students should inculcate as a habit right from, when they're starting to apply, is to be honest and authentic. There's never going to be someone who's going to go and say, give me these documents, let me verify. Now, if you're saying that you won, the Nobel Peace Prize or something, we'll dig into it. But, often a way to verify these things is through the college counselor. If you are a notable student, if you are a student who's a star athlete, if you are a student who is representing the nation for something, almost always we see that the college counselor, the guidance counselor at the high school is highlighting those factors. It's a disservice to the student if the counselor isn't, but it's an easy way for us to cross-check. If we get multiple letters of recommendation, again, something that is important to holistic, admission. So that's why it's important to really be mindful of who you're asking for a letter of recommendation. Is that person a good advocate for you? Do they know you well? Do they know your achievements? Because if you are saying that you won an award for publishing your book at the age of 11, and your guidance counselor has not even mentioned about your ability to write or publish, then there's a disconnect. That's when we'd be like, okay, there's something, something is missing, something is amiss. And it also comes down to how we read applications. Everyone reads applications differently. And I know Farheen and I have had chats about this. Some of us start with the grades, some of us start with the essay, some of us start with the letters of recommendation. Some of us start, by taking a look at what activities the student is doing. So, there are checks and balances within the system. Sometimes students don't realize that, but your guidance counselor, your college counselor is a person who is, kind of doing that for you internally. And well, the trust factor is important.
Okay, interesting. And you've already mentioned that you like if you find something out of the box, you'll do random audits, you'll do spot checks to deter exaggeration, and essentially what have you learned through the process. But
Naman, I wanted to pop in and say this that, because we are early decision at Bentley, often, in the first pool of applications, if there are multiple applications coming from the same school, and
yeah,
three students have said, I'm house captain, or I am, a football captain,
yeah,
then we start, digging and looking a little, deeper into these things because unless
yeah,
I am tripping, something is amiss here, right?
yeah,
So, that's also a way we use systems to read applications, which tells us how many students are applying from each institution. Um, we can see who their guidance counselors are. We can see all their information. So it's a matter of taking that additional step, but we do have the resources to see that, hey, 15 students applied and five are claiming to be, school captain. Something's wrong. So,
yeah.
those are also easy checks for us.
If there are five school captains, definitely either the school is doing something interesting or the students are. But yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, but there are several platforms like the Coalition App Locker emerging for standardized evidence storage, or let's say the Common App itself has a bunch of tools. So, do you see a future where universities are collaborating with such platforms, and are they already using such platforms to sort of check these? And what are some of the tools that is this more, let's say, an ATS that is driving it at the back end? Is it more manually? Is it more manual detection? Are there some tools that are being used, or is it more of human intelligence and of course it's you having a lot of data and pattern recognition that's working at the play?
You do get to see the data trends, but a lot of the work right now is human intelligence of manual labor We do have systems that talk to each other, and then we have fantastic systems that are great, but they don't talk to each other, which just makes our lives a little harder when it comes to,
Yeah.
detection, to implementation. Like we have logins to various portals where we are going in and checking matrices, we're checking, verifying documents. So even if it's, just your SAT scores, something as easy as your IELTS scores, your Duolingo scores, and things like that, Um, there are checks and balances available for us to verify what you're submitting. And then, again, going back old school with years of experience, when I see a TOEFL uh, sheet, I can tell if it's authentic or not. We have tools to be able to verify those kind of results as well. So some systems talk to each other, some systems automatically flag, some systems we have to use a little bit of our brain, which I don't mind. It keeps us on our toes. It keeps us, aware of what the market trends are, because we've noticed that some students can be very creative with how they present and send us data.
Yeah.
Not
Okay.
my
Interesting.
favorite, but they do it.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
So now that you've mentioned about a demonstrated interest in several tools that we have, obviously we are seeing coming for sure around the AI rise. In the field of like medicine, they use situational judgment tests. Are institutions like yourself considering to explore similar tools or preparing to probably internal tools that could demonstrate similar interest for students?
For demonstrated interest, obviously for international students, everything is inherently a little harder. It something as simple as coming to campus and engaging with, different events that we have on campus is so much easier for the students who are in and around the country. But it does get a little harder for international students, and that's where, we hope that they seek us out. For example, for my institution, demonstrated interest could be something as easy as requesting to set up an interview. But it has to be, remember when I started and I said the Bentley student that I'm looking for is a self-starter student, right? The demonstrated interest is a big part of profile building. You are telling me that you have done your research, you have found the institution that would be a good fit for you. And then you take it to the next level by being proactive, looking up the different ways that you can make your profile stronger. You're interacting with us when we are visiting your home country. If not, you're attending sessions like this where we are chatting with you, we are answering questions for you, you are advocating for yourself and doing that interview. All of these little actions contribute towards that holistic profile that we're looking at. When we are in committee, when we are talking to see what unique perspective the student will bring in, the number of times I've talked to you, the better I will know you, the more I can advocate for you. So the essential, the core value that we are looking for is someone who knows themselves, is able to advocate for themselves, and goes seeking for opportunities rather than being told that do X, Y. There is no one formula that works for everyone, right? Someone who was, say, school captain, debating captain, got a 80% scholarship to go to X university. Next year, similar student doesn't get that. Does that mean that that student's hard work is not valued at the same level? No. But maybe the parameters have changed. Maybe this year I'm focusing on someone who's more philanthropic, someone who's out there, running organizations or starting a club or going to the beach and getting something's cleaned up or, recycling. So there are different ways to evaluate the student. There is no formula that you do this plus this and then this is guaranteed. And like I said, or universities are living, breathing organisms. We change, we grow, we evolved, and we're changing as the student population is also changing, around the world.
Okay, interesting. And so you mentioned that it's not just one thing, but are essays the only way, or are you experimenting with portfolio based admissions? Maybe not portfolio based admissions, but how do you look at an overall portfolio? How does that play into your evaluation? And how do you find that the portfolio correlates better with campus engagement, leadership outcomes, recruitment at the campus? Like, how do you think the portfolio itself plays that role? And what are the ways to sort of demonstrate that? And how does Bentley take that in?
Important. And this brings us back to the question that the Common App gives you a guidelines of what we are looking for, what we are expecting. Um, Supplemental documents to that is always welcome. At the
Got
same
it.
time, something that is practical, sustainable, and realistic is also important.
Yeah.
Someone who's 17 should not have a 5-page resume that they're submitting. Automatic giveaway, right? If you have written your essay about how you come from a family business, you're fourth generation in a family business, and your goal is to make your company digital or to become the absolute expert in logistics and supply chain management, depending on the industry that you're coming from. And you're only talking about that in your essay. You've shown me that that's why you are choosing, say, Bentley, for example, because we have a fantastic logistics and supply chain management curriculum. We have, family business focused courses and things like that. So you're telling me that everything that has set you up till this moment is for this institution, this program, this degree. However, when I look at your extracurriculars, when I'm looking at your internships that you may have done, your research projects that you may have done, have nothing to do with what you have been telling me that you want to do.
Yeah.
I see a disconnect. I don't see a cohesion. So often I'll tell students who'll be like, Miss, can I do an internship before I even apply? By all means. But I would want you to think a little about the internship.
Yeah.
Intern at your family business if that is what's important. I'm not trying to, you working for Goldman and Sachs at 15, 16 means very little if all you did was have the letter saying that you worked there versus if you went to your family business, something that you are talking about, growing, expanding, digitizing, modernizing. You went and you learned how they do business currently will give you better clarity on what you will need to do in order to take it to the next level. So, that kind of cohesion in what you're saying versus what you're doing is a great way to demonstrate your portfolio, to give us a view into that you're actually serious about doing what you want to do. This shows us that you're committed. And, if you do decide to come to university at our institution, that you would actually benefit from being there, that's important.
Okay. Okay, interesting. So you mentioned that it's not the brand that matters, but the work that you do and what is the learning that you've had, and how do you translate that into your 4 years, 3 years, 5 years of living experience on campus? That is predominantly what you're looking at, and then how do you sort of look at diversity amongst all of these, given that you also want a diverse perspective? So how does, like, given, let's say, two applicants are similar, they've done different activities but bring the same perspective, then how does that differentiation work? And also with large review teams, how do you sort of figure out that, okay, while two reviewers might be reviewing similar profiles, it's still as diverse, and if they're similar, how do you rank? Well, it's not ranking, but then how do you pick and choose, and what will then make a portfolio stand out amongst the two?
This is where the demonstrated interest comes into play. So all universities will tell you that internally we all have standards so as to be unbiased and equal, whether you're applying from China, whether you're applying from Brazil, we standardize everyone's application, right? And yes, we do have multiple, people reading applications, evaluating applications. There's always at least two sets of eyes that go through an application. There's not just one person's decision that's, end all and be all. Um, I can talk about my institution where we do meet in larger, smaller groups and discuss student portfolios. Students who are very similar. They might not even be from the same school. They might be from two different parts of the world, but have had, a similar trajectory when it comes to the profile building. What does then play, a big role is the demonstrated interest. Have you gone looking for us? Have you interacted with us? Have you communicated with us? How many times? What was the nature of the conversation? Um, Whether or not during those conversations you made it abundantly clear what is it that you're seeking. Emailing me and asking me, oh, can I give you my unofficial transcripts? It doesn't count. But
Yeah.
to, email, to set up a call time, to show that, I'm deeply interested in this. Or I read on your website that that happens on campus. Can you tell me more about, the pitch competition, which is very popular on Bentley's campus? We have 24 Bloomberg terminals on our campus for students to learn to ethically trade on campus. Ask us questions about those things, that are not generic, that are pointed, that are specific. Those things help build your profile. Those, get on those calls and say, well, I'm doing this. And I saw that your campus does this. So I want to kind of take the learning and take it a step further when I'm on your college campus. I guess at the end of the day, be mindful of, where you're spending your energy, what kind of experiences you're hoping to gain, because, end of the day, that's what sets you apart, is your unique skill set.
Okay, very interesting. And have you launched, let's say, a bridge or foundation pathways across for students to join in? Are there some shorter programs that students can join in? Visits like what are some things that you have at Bentley for students to explore currently?
We do have the pre-college program at Bentley, where students come, stay on campus, take college level classes, get the first-hand experience of what college in America feels like. And this is not just limited to domestic students; it's also open to international students to be able to have that exposure. Um, it's not just about getting up and going to the classes. It's about being more responsible, doing your laundry, which is something that all international students learn very quickly. It's about, understanding that classes are taught differently in America. It's not a, rote memorization form of classes. A lot of times students, have the aspiration or the desire to study in the US, but they don't understand that it's not a, cookie cutter or a very spoon feeding nature of classes. There are no textbooks. There are research books that you are going through, trying to analyze. So, that's where maybe you worked on a research project in your high school, correct? Um, you learned how to gather information from several different places, put them together, write a report. Maybe you got it published, maybe you didn't get it published, but the act of having to do this is a skill set that would make you successful in college. So whether you do the pre-college track, whether you do, activities like working on research projects outside of your high school curriculum, these are all the skill sets that would prepare you better for college. Sometimes it's not feasible for international students to do the pre-college programs, to, to the summer semesters abroad, and that's fine. You're not going to get left behind if you're not doing one of these. If you can do it, by all means do it. If you cannot, there are other resources. And I encourage students to kind of, look a little bit to find what makes sense for them.
Ah, interesting. And so, if you were advising students directly today, what would an authentic readiness-driven profile look like in 2025? What common mistakes do you see? I'm sure there's no set formula to it, and every profile is very, very unique. But how would you want students to approach it? And beyond academics, what are some things that you would want to see? And essentially, yeah, what are some mistakes to avoid, and what are some sort of pointers to consider when they're trying to build a profile, not just for admissions but at large, also trying to understand what works for them.
I'm going to answer the what are the mistakes to avoid in a little bit, but I will say that when you are at the onset, of deciding how to build your profile, be it in ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, or even in 12th grade, there is no right time to start. As long as you have the awareness that this is something that you want to
That would be a very good
build
question
on,
about previous.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That's okay. As long as you have that spark of interest or that dedication that you want to do this, there is, there's always time to build your profile. So, if there are students who are in 12th grade and panicking that, oh, I didn't spend time building my profile, what do I do now? Don't panic. Pick two things or pick one thing and do really well at it. Show dedication. Don't spread yourself too thin, because then you are doing multiple things but not able to kind of pinpoint and say why you did something or what skill set you developed. So that is something that I would say that, if you want to start in ninth grade, well and good. If you're starting in 11th grade or 12th grade, that's also okay. Um, Profile building, activities. I keep saying something that resonates with you, that adds meaning to you. Often we see students will come and say, I want to study medicine and I only want to do pre-med and I only want to do this. And then, you go to college and something changes in you and you no longer want to do that. But the skill sets that you may have developed in the process of being a pre-med student or being a dedicated science student are skill sets that you can carry forward with you. So don't think of it as, here's my first don't, as impressing the college. Think of it as how it's adding value to your life and how
Yeah.
you will benefit from it. That's my first nugget of don't. The second don't that I love saying to students across the board is when you are looking, so Bentley requires 2 letters of recommendation, which is slightly different from the Common App, which essentially just requires one. So, be cognizant of different universities with different requirements. For the second letter of recommendation, students will often tell me, oh, can I ask my accounting teacher or my business teacher because I'm applying to a business program? That's not what you should be doing. You should go to a teacher who knows you. Hopefully you did well in their class, and someone who understands what your vision is and how attending college at Bentley would help you achieve that. I am not trying to recruit your teacher who teaches economics. I'm not trying to get them to come study, at our institution. So, their subject, specialization means very little to me. It could be your English teacher, it could be your theater teacher, it could be your creative writing teacher. As long as they understand who you are, can advocate for you, that is far more valuable than you giving me a letter from a student recently in one of my trips told me, my letter of recommendation comes from a professor at Bentley. And I said, okay, how do you know that professor? How well do they know you? Oh, I had met them and they agreed to write a letter of recommendation. I said, this is a classic error. I don't need a letter of recommendation from, the head of the CEO of Reliance. I'm not trying
Yeah.
to get them into a classroom. I need a letter of recommendation from a teacher who said, I've seen this child, ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. I have seen them grow academically. I've seen them talk about studying AI passionately for the last 4 years. And I think this would be a great institution for them. So essentially, I want students to kind of keep those kind of things in mind.
Okay, interesting. And how can schools and counselors help students see the full context of a student's journey, and to the university, how can they showcase the a student's journey across their school, across their work, across their portfolios? What are some things that you think counselors can sort of add value to, and sort of assist truly, which you see creates that difference?
I think counselors are people who have a deeper understanding of who the student is. We see the student on paper for the most of it, but they get to see the student living through their daily struggles and things like that. That's why the letter of recommendation is so important. The letter of recommendation, unfortunately, I understand sometimes teachers have 40 students that they're writing letters of recommendation for. They tend to become very generic, which is a disservice to the student. We would like a little more glimpse of who the child is. Sometimes, it's the outside of the classroom perspective that the counselor can bring in. Students often will not tell us if they're having issues and troubles at home, but counselors are able to give us that perspective saying that, hey, in 10th grade, when you notice that the grades went down, something happened in the family. They had to move countries, they had to change curriculums, they had to do that. So I think, if counselors have the bandwidth to write more personalized letters of recommendation, that would be ideal. But I also understand that sometimes counselors are writing 40 a day, and at some point they just want to be done with it. So if possible, provide that support for counselors to be able to really have that one-on-one conversation with students, because that matters to us to see what the counselor is saying.
Okay, very interesting. And with that, let's open the floor to folks in the audience, to counselors, to parents, students who are here. And if they have any questions, sort of feel free to ask across, and we'd be happy to sort of take it on.
I had a question. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Jahad. Yes, please go ahead.
Hi. Hi, thank you so much. I think that was a very useful session. Thank you for sharing all the insights, really important. So I work as a counselor with Athena Education, and we also have like a lot of students interested in your institution. So, my question is, I just wanted to understand how much time does an AO spend reading an application? And second question is, how do you begin? Like, do you evaluate the academic profile first and then the extracurriculars, or is it the essays? So what does the process look like?
As I mentioned this earlier as well, that different readers, different counselors, as we call ourselves, will read applications differently. Everyone has their unique way of reading, but at the bottom of it all, admissibility is very important. You may have a fantastic profile, you may have a great essay, letters of recommendation, everything. However, if, at the bottom of it, your grades make you inadmissible, that's the reality. So, yes, if I were to be asked, I do like to look at the grades first. I like to glance over them to see if there's something that's glaring. It's a problem if I'm seeing that the student has suddenly dropped their grades. They are no longer taking any AP classes, or, in 11th grade, they were IB, full DP student, and in 12th grade, they've dropped all of that and are just trying to get through. Those are indicators where I would be like, okay, I need to take a step back and see what's going on. But typically, it's a first glance to see whether or not the student is admissible. And then we start, like I'll just talk about myself and how I evaluate. And then I go to the essay. I
Okay.
want to get to know the student outside of their grades at that point.
Okay, thanks. And typically, how much time do you spend per profile?
Mm. For international students, I give myself almost about 8 minutes per application for international students, especially at the beginning of the reading season. That's when we're dipping our toes back, and you're more mindful of the applications that you're reading, because we are doing early action, early decision, things like that. We are slower with our reading at that time. But towards regular decision, we've seen, hopefully, X number of applications. We are seasoned by then. We know exactly what we're looking for. So early applicants, early decisions, early action students do have that kind of advantage, because we are spending a little more time to, evaluate those applications. So, they do stand a little more at an advantage.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay. Uh, yeah, the floor is open. Anybody else wants to come in, ask questions?
In terms of, I just wanted to quickly add, in terms of, how much time you spend on applications, um, it will again depend on university to university. At a previous role, I worked for a state school where the volume of applications were far larger across the board. We used different parameters. If we used, the state of Massachusetts guidelines to see whether or not the students' academics fulfilled those criteria, and that was of utmost importance. Medium, small-sized universities have the luxury of being a little more nuanced with, application reading. So depending on whether the school is test optional or not, or whether they're a state school versus private school. If I was at an institution where the SATs were mandatory, if the student didn't have the score, the median score, that would automatically like filter through, right? Um, if I worked at an institution where no matter what curriculum you came from, you needed your 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 3 sciences, 2 languages, 1 social studies. If you didn't meet that, you were out. That means you were out. So again, these are, little nuanced differences between the types of institutions as well, also the state. So, Massachusetts is a little different from, say, California when it comes to reviewing applications.
Okay, interesting. I have one last question before we sort of wrap up. Uh, Going outside, finding these opportunities, whether it's internships, whether it's building passion projects, whether it's doing research, uh, some students are self-starters. Some of them might require external assistance. They might go out and seek for players or counselors or learning players that assist doing that. Does that sort of is there a barrier in terms of assessment if you've gone out seeking some of these learning players to help build your profile, not to build your profile, but to get you access to those activities, or to essentially help you guide to what projects to you, or that doesn't matter, and what matters is what have you actually done, and how is that looked at predominantly?
If I see something like that, my perspective for that would be that, hey, the student realized that this is something that they are not able to navigate on their own. And they went out and, sought help. They found the resources, they found the person who could take them to the destination that they're looking for. And it's not a bad thing to seek for help or ask for help, as long as, when you are seeking for that kind of nuanced help from a service provider, it is unbiased and it is to the student's best interest. Universities shouldn't have any problems. And students come from different parts of the world, right? Someone coming from a tier 2 or a tier 3 city may not have the connections or the contacts to be able to get them into those rooms. Mongolia is my favorite example.
Yeah.
Those kids might not have the same resources as someone, say, coming from Mumbai or New Delhi, right? So
Yeah.
it's unfair to say that, hey, you enjoy all the resources while the other students, you have no access to them. As long as you have the foresight to seek help when you see that you are not able to do something, that tells me more about your character than anything else. So
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So with that, in interest of time, we're absolutely spot on. Thanks so much, Arisha. Was a pleasure having you with us here today. And this was very insightful and gave us a lot of pointers into understanding what goes on behind the doors on the admissions desk and at the admissions office at a university. And thanks everyone for joining, every counselor, every parent, every student
nice.
that joined us today. Uh, have a wonderful evening, and thank you for being a part of today's webinar. Look forward to staying
Thank you
in
so
touch.
much.
And
Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye bye.
perfect. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Right.